Hey people, Strawberin0 here, and today I am watching Aliens Dark Descent review by Mandaloregaming. I saw this game actually on Steam, and it released with like no fanfare whatsoever. It just dropped on Steam, and I was like, what the f is that game? Is it a shooter? It's clearly, now I can say it's a strategy game. So I was curious about this, and I when looking through Mandalore channel to decide what to react next, I saw that he actually has a review of this. So I was like, you know what? I am very curious about this game, so I will give it a go. Like, I am fresh after rewatching Alien, the first Alien and second Alien, which is Aliens, because I rewatched that for Dead by Daylight collaboration, which added Xenomorph and Ripley into the game. So I am fresh on the lore, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's see what this is. And I saw that this game has a pretty good rating on Steam, but not a lot of reviews, not a lot of people are talking about this. And goddamn, gaming has really changed, hasn't it? When back in the day when a game released and it was some kind of movie tie-in, you automatically assumed it was shit, but you played it for the fun aspect of playing a video game of your favorite movie. But now we are kinda entering this renaissance for licensed games where like Alien Isolation exists, and that's a fucking amazing game. This is probably like good. There's a bunch of Marvel games which are, you know, Insomniac's. I think it was Insomniac. I'm sorry if I messed it up. Spider-Man on PlayStation. There's so much like good crossovers in video games and good like licensed video games going around. It's gaming is a little bit stagnating in my opinion, but fucking licensed games are really thriving. So let's say what Mandalore has to say about this cool looking game.
Is that pizza? Save me a slice, squad.
It's been a long while since the Aliens franchise has come close to touching a strategy or a tactics game. I don't want to say it was because AVP Extinction
I didn't even know there was a strategy game to begin with.
was torture, but it was definitely undercooked. So now it has a brand new tactics game from the developer of Battlefleet Gothic. I didn't realize that until after I beat it, so that was a shock. It's not too often I do a video about a brand new game right at launch, but the idea of a real-time Aliens XCOM mashup thing, I was fascinated enough to get the review copy for launch. I didn't know what to expect for better or worse because again, my baseline is Extinction. Alright, so here's what this is all about. The story takes place about 20 years after the studio bar fight that was Alien 3. The remote moon of Lethe
Aliens 3 is the... I did not get that far in watching the movies, so I heard pretty polarizing things about like Alien 3, and pretty much everybody hates Alien 4.
colonized by Weyland-Yutani. It's not much of a concern to the company, and shady deals like smuggling happen there all the time. You play as the deputy administrator of the orbital shipping station, Maiko Hayes. She's an idealist at heart, hoping to climb the corporate ladder the correct way, which is hard when her direct boss is a human grease tray who's facilitating all the shady deals. It makes it no wonder that Customs misses the latest and greatest threat to agriculture, which may have been intentionally unleashed on the station, but your boss isn't part of that. The Xenomorph does its thing, the station goes to hell, and Hayes activates the Cerberus protocol, which is a network of satellites which will flechette down any ship attempting to enter or leave the planet. In true way you fashion it can't mark a clean ship, it just burns down everything. Hayes is rescued by a group of Marines that were already on the station led by Sergeant Harper, a man who is extremely prone to migraines and will only get worse now that his ship, the Otago, has been knocked out of orbit. All command staff are dead, communication is cut off with the rest of the colony, and now everything is up to them. They have to scavenge for supplies and survivors, make a plan to escape, and figure out how all of this happens.
That's a pretty
The
cool
story's not a
setup.
simple framework for something more freeform either. The missions are all directly plot-driven, and there are lots of cutscenes and a ton of journal entries to find. It is punching above its weight on that angle, which is good, but the tutorial for the game tries to showcase that, and it is slow and rough. It does have a lot of mechanics to teach you, which is justified, but you'll be stopped constantly for little conversations or to watch the alien come out, and stuff that just makes it feel sluggish. What's happening in the story is interesting, but on the gameplay side, it is a bad first impression. The good news is, this isn't reflective of the game as a whole, and the first mission after this is really what you're in for. This is also a game with a few customizable difficulty settings, and it is fun to go back and replay it for a harder challenge, which does make it annoying that there's currently no option to skip the tutorial on replay. It's not terrible, but it doesn't get better the second time. I mean, the entire appeal is role-playing as Lieutenant Gorman, sending your Marines in and trying to get them out alive. There are some missions that break away from that, but this is 95% of your time. So that said, let's move on to the graphics. When it comes to these kinds of games, I don't have huge expectations for pure visual quality, but the sheer amount of detail combined with how massive these maps can be make it lovely.
Yeah, I was about to say, this looks pretty fucking pleasing to the eye, you know. Just like XCOM is, you know, all about the gameplay pretty much. But XCOM also looks fucking gorgeous at times.
Most impressive I've seen. You can zoom out to a bird's eye view or be directly above your squad, and visually, neither of those look incorrect. Every room is packed with all kinds of objects and debris, which is already great on its own, but it also helps to give that extra level of paranoia since not every threat will immediately show up on your motion tracker. There could be an egg behind a barrel or a warrior crunched up in stasis anywhere. Your squad moves as a single unit, and a big part of the game is sweeping an area with your flashlight. It'll automatically select the nearest marine to do this, and beyond showing where the gene muggers might be hiding, it'll also highlight interactable objects, which you can eyeball, but this does help. Because some maps can have near pitch black sections, which is already hairy to navigate in, but much worse fighting in. So you do have tools to brighten things up. Even when it's not pitch black, it's still a shadowed and foggy world. Most of the environments are oppressively industrial, which is very faithful to the setting. There's still a good amount of variety inside of that, like a high-tech space station isn't going to look the same as a colonial slaughterhouse. Plus, the maps being large and having multiple layers means you can see all kinds of things inside the same mission. You could start out in the wetlands, or in the middle of a blizzard, but who knows what lies beneath. There's a fantastic sense of scale, and all the environments actually feel lived in. It's pretty cool that the game can have this massive backdrop of a spaceship, but it can scale down to show a man who died reaching for pizza. Like, you can see the slices in the box. It's that level of detail uncompromised on maps like these. And again...
Whoa. Okay, that's a lot. Like, XCOM was way more linear than this. Holy shit. That's a lot of open space. Damn.
Maps like these. Some of them are more intricate than the ones from the role-playing game. Nothing here was randomly generated, these are designed, and you can feel that. With that kind of scale, I did have some graphical slowdown at points, which didn't surprise me, but your mileage may vary. Sometimes areas can look too washed out, but overall it does an excellent job at capturing the atmosphere that it should. Moody, mysterious, and a chance of horrors around any corner. Your loyal troops bring most of the light, and will have to hold out until the disorders kick in.
I kinda wonder now, how is the music? Oh, okay, that's the next section. When I'm watching a Mandalore video, I literally don't have to like pause and talk, because Mandalore goes over all of the points I would like a reviewer to go over. Like, holy shit, his videos are well structured. Like, in information that anybody would like out of a review.
The actual character models are alright, but the trade-off is there is a fair amount of customization and upgrades that are reflected on the characters. Outside of some cutscenes, for most of the game you're mainly seeing them from a distance anyways, and they're still solid enough for this kind of genre. So I'm in the same headspace as Alien Isolation, where I don't mind the character fidelity as long as it trades off for the atmosphere. That can be tricky to pull off in a top-down game, but here, they succeed. It's also backed up by some solid sound design. All the movie effects you'd expect to be authentic, like the motion tracker and pulse rifle, those are all there. The environmental effects can also be great, like thudding machinery and loud, clunky computers processing, but the weather effects like howling winds and rain is definitely a standout. The ambience is strong enough that the music is very subdued a lot of the time. You might get some creeping strings or some drum beats, but it's mainly more noise to add tension. It only starts to ramp up during combat, but it's still never bombastic.
Incoming! Come on, team! Hurry up, you slugs!
They lost your track, squad. Good job.
Man, the motion tracker from the Aliens franchise is so fucking unnerving. Like, when you hear those beeps get faster and faster, it's so actually, like, nerve-wracking. Just a sound, that is powerful. That is designed, like, perfectly for its purpose.
Quiet. It didn't see us. Cut that door open!
Open up, Sesame.
For the most part, the music being low in the mix is fine for what the game is going for. Even in combat, since that'll be drowned out by gunfire and Marines yelling.
They got our scent! Look alive! Suppressive fire!
Come and get it! I'm ready!
Music being a quieter accent is fine for the main gameplay, but is noticeably weird aboard the Atago. This is where you do all your troop management, and sometimes it feels like being in a void. Like, you've just come back from an absolute shit show of a mission. You barely pulled it off, but you accomplished the mission, and this is what's waiting for you.
Yeah, that is weirdly hollow.
I'm not saying it needs to be a parade, but it makes the Atago feel weirdly empty. You can't do that when you're trying to invoke the XCOM deployment menu.
Yeah, you need some of that triumphant shit when your people actually get back from the mission in this type of game. There we go.
We can be a little more gung-ho about shooting aliens. Jesus, no wonder the squad leader's depressed. I don't know, I feel like getting hyped up before getting your ass kicked is very in the spirit of Aliens. There are
Yeah.
plenty of tense, foreboding tracks in the franchise to draw from, but as is, Atago management feels very barren.
Let's hope our Matt won't sue us.
The voice acting can also be a bit all over the place. The main cast is solid, and most of the Marines give a good delivery.
Hey man, if that ever happens to me, just shoot me, okay?
They'll get doused with acid and scream their head off, and that's all great. There are some lines that are more flat, but the worst of them are when they try to quote the movie. It almost seems like the voice actors themselves hated it so much they started doing it ironically.
Game over, man! Game over!
Those things are handy for close encounters.
Fighting these beasts with shovels, harsh language, and pickaxes.
This isn't just in-game callouts either, like there's a part here where Hayes and Harper get into a fight, and I am interested in what's happening, and then...
Well, congratulations, Hayes, when it comes to badass your state-of-the-art.
I just find this shit so distracting. And I don't mean to be no fun allowed who doesn't like quoting aliens sometimes, but it happened enough here that it became worth bringing up. Because if the game is already this detailed, faithful recreation of the movie's setting, I assume they like the movie. It comes off as being
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to, like, you don't need... Sometimes it's okay to fan service it all up, but some games actually gain a lot from not fan servicing it all up, you know? Like Alien Isolation and this are so good at bringing you into this setting, this recreation of this, you know, movie franchise, that I don't think they need to drop all of the names and the quotes and whatever. And it's good in Isolation because it happens, obviously, the protagonist is directly related to the movie heroine, so there are links there. But for the most part, like, your character isn't quoting the movie like every fucking 30 minutes. It's her own story, you know, her own, like, encounter with the alien. And that's fine. So yeah, you don't always need to shovel the fucking references and quotes and whatever.
desperate when it doesn't need to do this. The game is going off in its own direction and story, so those constant callbacks start pulling me back out of it. It's still not as bad or desperate as Colonial Marines, which also had the Sharp Sticks pre-order item. You know, as referenced by Hudson in the movie.
We got nukes, we got knives, sharp sticks.
I'm just shocked they didn't include Apone's harsh language sonic gun.
Wait, that's real?
It's not a huge deal, but was jarring enough to bring up. An alien's line here or there in your alien's project is fine, but when it's this often it's mostly obnoxious. Mostly. I do give a pass to Let's Rock because that at least sounds natural.
We're spotted! Let's rock!
He gets a pass too. That's so polite. On the gameplay side, it clearly does take inspiration from the RPG, though obviously more combat-focused, but the core of the game revolves around risk. From the moment you're deploying your first Marines, they have personality traits, and of course, none of them are good. They could be higher chances for RNG screw-ups, or flat debuffs like a guy who keeps starting shit when everyone's on their downtime. It turns out not all the Marines joined up for their love of slaying dragons, but were in fact tricked by the recruiter at their high school cafeteria. Others are survivors who can hold a gun, so for now, no one is fully committed. Eventually, you could get an attribute to remove the negative trait, but that comes with experience. You can also buy supplies for the deployment, like tools that let you weld doors, repair robots, hack computers, and a lot more. You've also got your standard issue first aid kits, and of course, the sentry guns. Ammunition is also an issue, but you can't deploy with extra. Now, you can find all these things throughout the mission, but with the exception of ammo, you can't carry all of it. And going back to how intricate the maps are, supplies can be very spread out. That unknown factor with your supplies is the second layer of uncertainty. Now, while the game has a lot of combat, avoiding unnecessary confrontations is central. When the aliens first realize you're there, they launch a hunt for you. At first the aggression is pretty light, but as the hunt goes on, it starts ticking upwards. Whether you kill them, distract them, or run away, if you can hide out long enough, the hunt will end. But that overall aggression meter stays where it was. As the mission goes on, the attacks become more elaborate and violent. When you hit a new level of aggression, the Hive will launch an onslaught. This gives you about 30 seconds to prepare before the penetration parade arrives.
That's a very interesting system to put in a game like this. Kinda reminds me of Payday, where you get... Obviously, the assault comes in waves, and it's very much less intricate because... It's obviously less intricate because Payday maps are much smaller than this from the looks of it. And you mostly are like waiting for the drill to end anyway, so it's a very natural thing to just hunker down in one room and to wait it out. But in this you need to like really pace yourself because obviously the mission is gonna take some time and you don't wanna take a lot of these assaults, so that's a very cool mechanic.
They can also be joined by larger forms like the Praetorian and the Crusher, which actually debuted in Colonial Marines. These are called Class 2 Xenos, and they could be called that because these are the only two types. And for how many forms this franchise has now, that is disappointing. I mean, I'd love to see the Carrier make an HD return. Anyhow, as the mission goes on and the Hive starts screeching louder, the aggression levels will get out of control. Beyond the risk to your squad's health, you also have their stress to manage. You can control it through some squad leader abilities, using a first aid kit to pop pills, or use tools to weld up doors and create a shelter the gang can rest in.
You shall not pass, fuckers.
As your troops get more experienced and brave, they can slow down the onset of stress, but stress is a little demon that compounds misery. With each new level unlocked comes new negative effects unless you treat it. They can get so scared that their hands shake and they're less accurate, they can be confused or panic and have less points for combat skills, or start ranting and raving, stressing everyone else out. For an extra kick, for each level of stress reached in a mission, even if you heal it, you receive a trauma point, which means you want to mitigate stress early. Because if you don't, the whole squad will roll up with all kinds of new disorders. The squad leader can become much more depressed. Post-mission, you have a medbay to heal the Marines who got too physically injured, and an entire trauma ward, because the sounds of hissing just do not leave at night. You can just throw them back into the fight if you don't mind the smart gunner being borderline, but this all loops back to managing your health, stress, and supplies. Is the mission worth it if the squad will be out of commission for days and unstable after if you don't spend even more? The genius of this game is you can extract at any time. In fact, you're encouraged to do this because the maps are so large and can have so many secondary objectives open up that it expects you to do it in multiple deployments. These are persistent maps. What door you welded or where a broken sentry might be, that all stays. But you have a fresh squad and unbothered aliens. But it feels like more than one trip for the groceries. We can do it. We don't need a second trip. Oh god, we do on this one. This was 3 trips of suffering. So combat is inevitable, but the game gives you tools to try and avoid it for as long as you can. Your motion tracker is still your first line of defense against faraway threats. From there you can try to avoid it entirely, or sneak around using cover. You can go on the offensive too. A class like the Recon could eventually unlock a suppressed sniper rifle, or use a sentry gun without a squad, which the Hive can break easily, but they won't know the whole squad is around. You can find the awful hidey holes the aliens come out of, and leave a deployable motion tracker as an early warning system. These can also emit a ton of noise before destroying themselves, so they make for a great distraction. Combine that with laying down minefields, or slowing them down by welding off doors. They'll have to break it down like a cat wanting to be let in. You'll unlock all kinds of tools and upgrades as the game goes on, including xenotech, which you get through exploration or risky side objectives like murdering queens. And even the act of killing the queen can expose your troops to hydrofluoric Splash Mountain. Xenotech can give you ways to remove facehuggers, acid-proof armor, but again, each deployment, it's gonna cost some resources to use it. And eventually in the campaign, the Cerberus protocol puts a time pressure on you. It is adjustable in the options, but it makes your deployments more cautious, if you do decide to deploy. The game has a ton of ways of stacking pressure, but it makes your choices feel meaningful. And that does range from the bigger campaign event and upgrade choices, down to really small things in combat. For an easy example, your squad has 2 speeds of walking and running. They can only move and shoot if they're walking, so combat seems like a no-brainer here. Find a nice spot to set up a choke point and go nuts. This seems well and good until you realize the aliens can start snatching your guys away. You might not catch him running and shooting, so you can give chase if it's alone and probably get him back. But if you try to do that while the squad is still under attack, you put everyone at risk and can easily be wiped. Sometimes, you've got to make some hard calls. There are humanoid enemies too, which you naturally get worried about when you hear that that's going to be in an alien game. And there are some sections that are just straight up gunfights. They're fine on their own, but not a strength of the game and not what people are coming for. And the developers seem very aware of that. The sound of gunfire and especially explosions...
Yeah, but from what Mandalore has just said, I'm assuming they just are there to break up the usual pacing or the monotony of the mission. Because no matter how good a combat loop gets, you gotta put something in there to like just break up the loop that the players are used to. Otherwise, they will start feeling bored, and you do not want that.
Will attract the aliens. So some fights turn to absolute mosh pits unless you find a way to get the aliens on them first. Unless they're part of the cult that lives in harmony with the xenomorphs, then you've got problems.
Great ascended, grant us your strength!
You getting tension and problems piled on but still pulling through it is the core of the game, and it's an extremely strong one. Moments like reloading a sentry just in time or moving your APC into the perfect choke point. There's only a dozen missions and some are only 15 to 30 minute affairs, but others can last hours. There's room for all kinds of situations and a lot of replay value. If it seems too high pressure for real time, the game does slow down when you use an ability, but you can change that to be a complete pause if you want to. I did go with slow-mo so I wouldn't be completely off the hook, but the game can be gentler. I did have a lot of fun playing it, but there are some noticeable shortcomings. On the polished side it was mainly good. There might be a visual bug or something not working that would always fix in a load. The biggest danger is the pathfinding, which overall is still pretty great for how large the maps are, but there are certain crates and objects in a few levels where it seems like a marine can get more easily stuck. If you don't notice it, that's a disaster waiting to happen. I'm sure stuff like that will be more polished up, so that's not one of my bigger issues. Having the squad move as one unit is convenient, but you can't separate them out manually, only if they're going to an interactable object or something that's already placed on the map. You can't do something like move a single marine to open a door to have more line of sight for your weapons. I get why they didn't have that level of individual control, but there were times where I did miss it. Speaking of control, there are a few times where you lose it and get cutscene run into an alien hive or something that I would never do on my own, which is extra annoying when you immediately start getting obliterated. It'll usually give you the courtesy of saying a big fight is coming up, but not always. It can also be unclear where the fight will be. Also, the lack of unique alien varieties is still a disappointment. When you're listing the egg, facehugger, and chestburster as 3, that feels like some reaching. There is a pretty cool new one, but it's only a set piece at the very end of the game. They do mix up what they have by giving them different abilities, which does change up how you handle a fight, but not dramatically. I would have liked if they had more variants to really throw a wrench in your plan, or at the very least, more Class 2 forms. Class 2 approaching only meaning a Crusher or a Praetorian is incredibly underwhelming. The game is paced well enough where it doesn't feel stale. My first run I beat in a little over 20 hours. It's still cutting it close, and as much as I'd like for there to be more missions in the future, there'd have to be new aliens. I get he's a big dude, but you're expecting him to carry too much. It also feels bad that the final mission in the game isn't a big final hurrah with your squad, but instead a mission more like the tutorial where it's some pre-established story characters, and not much of the tactics you've been playing the game for. If it was a great story wrap-up, I'm sure I wouldn't care. The game's story has interesting and even some thoughtful elements to it, but I do think it gets snagged by a now long-running series trap where it raises a lot of questions, but doesn't answer them. There are payoffs on the character side, at least when it comes to Hayes and Harper, but others are picked straight out of the jar for movie stereotypes, and you'll guess where things are going. Like the movie lines, there's a lot of unnecessary retreading. Having a cult that is somehow in harmony with the aliens is already an interesting draw. And if you look through the logs, there's a lot about how cults like this form in the first place. Weyland-Yutani is a horrible company, and people are desperate for a new life and a new chance. And that could have been a background detail and just been the end of that. Instead, we have to go through Weyland-Yutani is evil, they want money and power. We've seen this so many times now. They do make a point of saying good people work for the company,
especially
and they have compromised themselves to
man, in this fucking franchise, we've seen it so much in just a couple of movies. But in general, in this medium, holy shit, this topic has been explored ad nauseum. Like, why even bring something like this up in your game when it's a refread of a story that's been said a million times?
advance? Hayes is learning that legality does not equal morality, but that angle's not that interesting because you've seen this kind of story all over the place. At this point,
Exactly.
the Weyland-Yutani logo is basically a space swastika. I don't think its higher-ups being involved in nefarious shit can be considered a reveal anymore. At this rate, a Weyland executive being good would actually be a twist. I'm not saying it's bad because the story does have its cool moments and knows when to keep some mysterious things cryptic, but if this moment in the trailer extremely caught your attention like it did for me, it's never expanded on into being something great. I struggled with whether or not to talk about the story in more detail here. I've realized that the plot is good at keeping you moving forward, but a lot of reveals are extremely mundane or very abrupt. Some people die in a blink. The more unique elements are left open-ended, and while the last mission does raise some great potential for a future story, I still found it ultimately unsatisfying. It came across like they had a great concept, but aren't yet sure where to go with it. I just wish the story had been more focused in, because I prefer what's happening with Harper and the Colonial Strogg. As is, the imagery is more interesting than what they actually do with it. But it's okay because the game is fun.
Great ascended, grant us your strength!
Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Dark Descent.
I mean, yeah, like gameplay being good should be the main focus anyway, so...
I didn't know I wanted an Aliens game like this until I played it, since most of what I envision is in first person. It's also not being sold as a full-priced game, so if you like the setting or high-pressure tactics games, I think you could pick it up day one and be happy. If you're on the fence, it might be worth it to wait for a sale when it's a little more polished. I do hope it's not the end of the game and they have some mission packs or something like that in the future. It has great mechanics that really appeal to the risk versus reward I like in the genre, and with more tools, weapons, and enemies, I think it can only get stronger. Overall, this game was a great surprise, and I wish this was the one that was called Colonial Marines. It certainly feels a lot more worthy of the name. Alright, I'll see you next time.
Okay, that's a little funny.
He didn't see. Oh shit.
Unlucky. Yeah, that's everything for this video, I guess. Cool game. I am actually interested as someone who really likes XCOM. So I will definitely dig in, maybe wait for a sale or something. I did scroll down to the pinned comment and see that a couple of things Mandalore said in this review are now fixed. You can skip the tutorials when you're replaying the game. And there was another thing that was annoying to him that was also fixed, but I at this point forgot what it was. So yeah, great to hear developers actually taking feedback and improving their fucking products. This is literally what this industry evolved to do that, but they actually don't do that, you know, updates that make the game better, new content added. Discs not being sold anymore was supposed to lead into this future where some of your favorite games are getting updated all the time, but it doesn't happen with a lot of games, sadly. Good to see that this is one of the games where developers clearly care about the product. So yeah, this will be everything for today, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you as always in the next one. Stay safe out there, guys.